Avem privilegiul să realizăm un interviu cu unul din cei mai importanți generali pe care armata americană i-a avut în Europa și în lume. Generalul Ben Hodges este fostul comandant al forțelor terestre americane în Europa. General Hodges, thank you for accepting this interview.
Thanks for the privilege.
I want to ask you, what do you know and how could you describe Romania's military profile and Romania's role into NATO?
I really think about Romania as an ally in three sort of categories. Number one, my personal experience with Romanian soldiers in Zabul province in Afghanistan, great men and women, very professional, very reliable ally, and several soldiers, of course, paid that price. Romania was one of the only countries that increased their commitment in Afghanistan when the United States increased our commitment. So I've never forgotten that. UK and Romania were the only two that increased when the US increased. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind immediately about Romania as a NATO ally and as a friend of the United States. The second thing that immediately comes to mind is about the effort that's currently underway, I think thanks to the leadership of the Chief of Defense, General Chuka, to improve and modernize capability. Equipment, training, organization. I've known General Chuka now since he was the Army Chief, so for over 5 years. His vision and his energy, and I see the results. Now, obviously, he can't do it by himself. It requires the parliament support, the government support. But what I see of Romania is a significant increase, and that Romania is a 2% country because of its investment in defense. Obviously, that makes Romania a very reliable ally. And then the third sort of place where I think of Romania as an ally is on this map. Right here in one of the most important parts of Europe, the greater Black Sea region, you can feel that NATO is putting more and more attention on this region, that we are coming to realize how important strategically for all of us the Black Sea region is. And I think that Romania will end up being playing such a critical role, almost maybe the center of gravity for what NATO needs to do in the Black Sea region.
General, Romania has on its own soil the biggest military investment in the Eastern Europe, and I'm talking about the system of anti-ballistic missile in dezvăluiri. Russia threatened so many times to attack and destroy the state of dezvăluiri. Even all the NATO and Romanian officials said that this is 100% a defensive system. And what is your evaluation about this threat coming from Russia month by month and the tension that is rising?
Yeah, well, you're completely correct in that this ballistic missile system established in dezvăluiri, just like the one that will be completed in Poland hopefully soon, were put there to protect European citizens, our allies, from missiles coming out of Iran. The Russians are professional. They know that these two systems are completely, they are not the right system. If we were serious about trying to stop missiles coming out of the Russian Federation, it would be immediately overwhelmed by the sheer number. So this is part of the typical false Russian narrative to try to blame others for their own aggressive behavior. Now, there is no doubt in my mind, if Russia decided to launch an attack, of course they would come after those systems. But I think it's unlikely, it's not necessary, and this is part of their false narrative.
Some weeks ago, you said something that provoked me very much. You said that it's possible that during this multi-year aggression of Russian Federation in Black Sea, we can see in the future that Romania could be attacked by Russia. And I was very provoked by this statement of yours, especially that you're a high-ranking general, you were the head of a United States Army in Europe, then you have a solid background to launch such a provocative affirmation. Why do you think that Romania, as a NATO member, can be a target to Russia? Because never in the history of NATO, Russia didn't launch an attack on a NATO member.
Yeah, and your last point is a very important point. The reason that Russia has never attacked a member of NATO, not with armed force, is because they knew that the alliance was so tight, the cohesion and the commitment was so strong that if they ever attacked any member, that they were going to have to fight against the entire alliance. That's what Article 5 is all about. An armed attack on one shall be considered an attack on all. So the likelihood of a Russian attack on Romania or any other member of the alliance, I would say, is not great. It's unlikely, and we want to keep it unlikely. I think there's a new Iron Curtain, and it cuts right across the Black Sea. You have Romania, Bulgaria, and Turkey on one side, and then you have Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia on the other side. And Russia knows that they can do things against these countries, violate their sovereignty, use force, without automatically getting a sharp military response from NATO. So they do that. 10,000 Russian soldiers still occupy 20% of Georgia. 2,000 peacekeepers in Transnistria. 30,000 soldiers in Crimea, which they have illegally occupied and illegally annexed. And then, of course, in Donbass, almost 40,000 Russian soldiers and Russian-led separatists that are there. And then everybody has seen the YouTube video of the Russian ship ramming the Ukrainian vessels, and those 24 sailors are still in a prison in Moscow, in a jail, for allegedly violating Russian territorial water. Well, of course, they're talking about the waters around Crimea. Those are not Russian territorial waters. Nobody in the world recognizes that except the Russians themselves. So what that demonstrated to me, that the Russians were willing to continue doing what they have done for centuries, which is to push, push, push until they finally are stopped, politically, diplomatically, or militarily. If the West does not demonstrate strong deterrence in the Black Sea region, then I think they will continue towards Odessa. And it may not be military. I mean, Russians actually control most of the companies that operate the ports around Odessa. Those are Russian companies. So you've got internal threats, disinformation, cyber, economic pressures. If the alliance is not strong in the Black Sea region, and if the alliance in anywhere looks like we are not cohesive, if the Russians make a terrible miscalculation that maybe the alliance, the countries would not respond because they don't want to get involved in a nuclear war. And this is why Russia demonstrates nuclear capabilities all the time. They threaten Romania, Poland, Sweden, Denmark. You will be a nuclear target. That's so that political leaders are always conscious of, if we get into a conflict, it might go nuclear. And that's the Russian approach to warfare. So again, I think it's unlikely. I think it's very unlikely. But the only way we keep it unlikely is by being cohesive, being prepared, being strong.
if you will be an advisor to Romanian administration with your huge military experience, what will you tell to Romanian officials, especially that Romanian shore is only 300 miles from this huge military Russian hub in Crimea?
So, first of all, I would like to highlight something that that you mentioned earlier. The West, the rest of the alliance, as well as the United States and Canada, are increasingly aware of the important role that Romania plays, from geography, from your commitment as an ally, and of course Russia's bad behavior since their invasion of Georgia 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and then of course in Ukraine, it's brought attention. So Romania has the opportunity to really play a very important role in this strategically important region because of the Black Sea, because of the Danube River, because of the proximity to Ukraine, and exactly as you mentioned, Russia. Romania is a critical ally and in a critical place. So I would, if asked, my advice to the leadership of here in Romania is you have to prepare for a potential kinetic conflict, as we discussed earlier. We want to keep it unlikely, and the way you keep it unlikely is by having modern equipment, modern forces, well-trained, well-manned, Army, Navy, Air Force, air and ground. So you have to keep doing this. This investment is for the security of your own country as well as contribution to collective security. And by the way, I hope all of your listeners, your viewers know, we have Romanian soldiers that are working with the American unit in Poland as part of our enhanced forward presence battle group. So Romania's contribution is beyond just Romania. But we also have to think about the other kinds of threats that come from Russia. Disinformation, cyber, use of economic leverage. When you think about really important infrastructure in Romania, I immediately think of the wonderful seaport of Constanța. One of the biggest ports on the Black Sea, very important for us and for other people. Russia could shut it down just with a cyber attack. The way that they shut down Maersk shipping lines in 2017 for several weeks with a simple cyber attack that actually was aimed at Ukraine, but it ended up striking Maersk. It cost them hundreds of millions of euro. And that's when I realized the vulnerability of all of our ports. So Romania has to be prepared for that. Invest in cyber protection for seaports, airports, power generation. These are all going to be important, and they'll be very vulnerable otherwise. The other thing I would recommend is strong, resilient societies. The countries and societies that do not have confidence in their government or in their legal system or in their electoral process or in the media become very vulnerable and susceptible to disinformation by Russia. Russia, of course, you've seen in the United States how we are dealing with it. I think every country in Europe has been affected by it. The Russians have spent a lot of money to support this agitation by extremists on both sides. This is all part of their approach to warfare. I mean, General Gerasimov describes it very openly, that there is no longer a solid boundary between war and not war, and the use of military versus all the other means. They're very open about that's what they're doing, and nobody should be surprised about it or what they're doing. So that means that our populations, our societies, have to be strong and resilient too. And that really comes from trust, transparent governance, trust that the legal system truly is fair and blind, and that people are held accountable for corruption, Our officials are held accountable for corruption. This is just as important as having modern equipment for the military, because this is what's being targeted. I think that, and that requires strong political leadership to do that. What you do, the media, is so important. I mean, people in every country have begun to lose confidence in media because they're not sure, are they getting the truth or are they getting somebody's version of the truth, or is it something completely made up, fake news. So it's important that your huge audience is confident in what you bring to it, and that's a very important part. Even if some high-level officials or elites or oligarchs don't like what you do, it's essential.
General Hodges, United States is the most important NATO ally of Romania. We have a strategic partnership, and we have a strong military presence of United States in Romania. You said about Constanța. In Constanța, there is an important air base, Cogolnicianu, MK. And right now, there are like 1,000 US troops with equipments. We have Deveselu, the biggest investment in Europe. We have Câmpia Turzii. We have the training camp of Cincu. And we see that Romania and the United States are coordinating when we talk about defending the eastern flank of NATO through European Reassurance Initiative and through hundreds of millions of dollars that the United States is investing in Romania. Can we explain to the people what will be the US engagement in the future and how the Article 5 will be operable in case of need?
So I think there should be no doubt in anybody's mind, Romanian or any other NATO ally, and also in the minds of the leadership of the Russian Federation, that the United States is totally committed to NATO, that we will be here. When we're serious about something, we put our soldiers on it and we put money on it. And what you just described is a manifestation of that. I think our ambassador, Ambassador Clem, one of our best diplomats, has made it very clear the United States is committed. So none of our Romanian allies or friends should wonder for a second, will the United States respond? I mean, we have 1,000 soldiers here. So, we're accepting the risk next to you, just like your soldiers are accepting the risk next to us up in Poland. Now, this commitment, of course, is only part. The military commitment is only one part. Think of American commitment to our allies as a three-legged stool. One leg of the stool is this military commitment, the missile defense, the wonderful base at MK, where we are a tenant inside a Romanian air base. Great capability for us, thanks to the vision of some of my predecessors in U.S. Army Europe. So that's one leg. The second leg is American diplomacy. I mentioned Ambassador Clem, other members of the State Department, and others who engage in public diplomacy as well as official diplomacy. That's a very important part of that. And again, I think I'm very proud of our embassy and of our ambassador in what they've done. But the third leg of the stool, and this is an area where I think we can do a lot more, is on private investment. Romania has got so many talented young people, and unfortunately, so many of them leave, go elsewhere in Europe for work or for whatever reason. And I think if the United States is going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in defense here in Romania, we obviously think it's important, then we want to find ways for American business to invest here in Romania as well, to help with this strengthening of a resilient society, to provide residential areas, developments, things that would cause young people to want to stay in Romania. So I think that third leg of the stool is one that I would like to see more attention from the U.S. side as well. I'm going to Cluj this weekend. I'm working working with friends on a project there to help support small businesses, residential areas, and it is an opportunity to do something with U.S. investment where smart, bright, talented young Romanians think, oh, I want to stay here in Romania.
We need your advice based on a huge experience. And I want to ask you, General Hodges, how important are the economic investments in a country like Romania on the eastern flank of NATO? What is the link between security, defense, and investments in energy resources?
Yeah, great question. First of all, any company that's going to invest money, particularly if they're looking for energy resources, they're going to have to do an assessment of the risk. If they're going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars to drill, for example, they've got to be confident that they're not going to lose their investment due to military conflict, something like that. Or else the price is going to be extremely high to justify the risk for them. And of course, with Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea and the way that they now enforce the waters around Crimea as if those are territorial waters of Russia, that sort of changes the boundaries in the Western Black Sea, which is why it's so important that the West not accept this, that we push back on this, just the way the United States Navy is enforcing freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. We have got to do the same thing in the Black Sea. Enforce freedom of navigation, not allow Russia to claim these are our waters when they're not. I think that's going to be an important part of creating an environment that's secure enough for serious industry and business to, think this will be worthwhile. And of course, if there's opportunity for profit, then the interest goes up. Look at both ends of the Black Sea. The west end here where you are, and then the east end at Georgia. I think in the next 10 years, maybe even sooner, we're going to see a significant increase in commerce moving across the Black Sea. And the Russians don't like it because they won't control it. In Georgia, they are beginning to develop a port called Anaklia, which will be a deep water port that will be able to handle all container ships that come up through the straits. If it can come into the Black Sea, the port of Anaklia will be able to handle it. If that's true, if that develops as the way I'm hearing it will, then I think you will see Georgia become a logistical hub between China, Eurasia, and Europe. Because Chinese products on rail that would come across here and then go through Georgia, then transload into a ship in Anaklia, it could come straight across to Romania.
An EU market.
Exactly. Or it goes out into the Mediterranean. So Romania has the opportunity to benefit significantly, because right now, Constanța, a wonderful seaport, but it's bypassed by the rail that carries so much Chinese product all the way to Duisburg in Germany. But now, if this port of Anaklia opens up, I see huge opportunity for Romania, and especially because the Black Sea region includes the Danube River. Now, I spend most of my time in Europe. Probably 90% of my time is in Europe. Frankfurt is my second home. And so I'm very close to the Rhine River and the Main River. I see how much cargo traffic goes up and down those rivers. Nothing like that on the Danube. And I think the Danube has so much potential if Romania, Bulgaria, and the other Danube nations are able to keep it dredged and maintained. So you see the economic potential, this port in Georgia, improving the Danube.
Right to the heart of Europe.
Exactly. 8 different European nations are on the Danube River. Right now, it's wonderful for tourists, but not so great for serious cargo. So I see a lot of economic potential. The Russians don't like it, of course, because they want to keep those Chinese trains going through Russia. And that's why they're trying to undermine this port of Anaklia.
And that's why their aggression on Georgia and Ukraine and right close to the Danube Delta and seashores.
The Russian Federation wants the Black Sea to be this is their water. And of course, because of the Montreux Convention of 1936, it's difficult to bring in sufficient U.S., British, German, Italian Navy capability to challenge them. So we've got to come up with alternative solutions to make sure that we all can enjoy freedom of navigation in the Black Sea.
So Romania is in the middle of a process that could transform this country into a huge opportunity, huge hub, defense, security, economic, energy, IT, everything that counts, transport.
You have said it better than I could have. I've been trying to say it, and you just in 10 seconds said it better than I could have said it. Because of where it sits on the map, it has the potential for huge economic growth. It has the potential to be the center of gravity for NATO's efforts to provide stability and security in the Black Sea region. And you've got so many talented young people here in this country. We want them to stay.
My friend Mircea Joană has a very nice expression that I like. He said, we must transform Romania's geography in our biggest advantage in the next decades. So geography, it's about our potential in the future.
Romania's been blessed. I mean, you have the potential to really, but of course, the Russian Federation knows that. And that's why the United States has put so much attention and interest here and investment because we know that in a crisis, Romania would be threatened. And no Romanian should wonder whether or not the United States will be here. You've heard our great ambassador say it. You've heard our political leadership say it in the U.S. And you see our soldiers here.
General Hodges, one last question. Those are times with big political troubles, and we see tensions between the United States and European Union. We see the Brexit, and we see also some other provocations like cyber attacks and let's say an evolution inside the European continent that gives us some worries. NATO, it's 70 years this year, and we are very proud of this anniversary. Taking into account of this political turbulences that are happening in Europe and between the United States and Europe, where do you see NATO in the next 20 years and European security?
So I'm 60 years old. So I was just last week at the 70th anniversary celebrations in Washington, D.C. I expect to be at the 100th birthday of NATO. I think I'll still be hanging in there.
I'm sure.
And able to get there. So I am not worried about the future of our alliance. It's been around for 70 years, and it's the most successful alliance in the history of the world for a reason, because all of its members have shared values. We all care about the same things. We're committed to each other. Now, certainly not every member of the alliance is equal in its application of liberal democracies, but at our core, that's what we all are. I mean, we are all democratic nations that love our freedoms and are committed to each other. So that's why I'm confident. The United States, since we joined NATO in 1949 when it was first formed, 70 years ago, we've been at war in Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Kuwait, Afghanistan. We've conducted anti-terrorism operations in Africa, elsewhere in the Middle East, and Syria. We've never been in a war in Europe. I mean, think about that. Every member of the alliance has been at war 2, 3, or 4 times with half of the other countries in the alliance at some point in our history. The United States has fought Canada twice. We lost. We're never doing that again. You know, we fought with the British twice. We fought with the Germans twice. We fought with the French. We've fought against the Spanish. I mean, on and on and on. And of course, all those countries in continental Europe, so many wars. But since joining NATO, 0. 70 years. That's amazing. Now, it's not perfect, but it's amazing. And it requires people that are committed. And the one time that we have had a conflict in Europe since the beginning of NATO, NATO solved it or stopped it. And of course, that was with the breakup of Yugoslavia, NATO going into Bosnia to implement the Dayton Peace Accord with the I-4. What a great story. Again, it's not perfect. There's always tensions between countries, like Greece and Turkey. Of course, there's tension. Right now, there are tensions between the U.S. and Turkey over the S-400 or F-35. I think this is more about political strategic thinking than it is about Turkey wanting a particular weapon system. And I'm not convinced that they're actually going to go through with it. I was in Izmir when they were going to get the Chinese system and they changed it at the last minute. So let's wait and see. Turkey is such an important ally. Again, you look at the map, you know, where it's located. There's a reason that we invited Turkey to join NATO back in 1952 because of it's such an important place. You talk about tension between the United States and the EU.
And the Brexit and
yeah, I mean, sure, there are
the so disputed European Army project.
But these, you know, to me, these are like serious arguments between family members. I mean, at the end of the day, we're going to figure it out. Of course, my president is going to do everything he can. That's why he was elected, to make sure that American industry, American economy, has the chance to compete fairly. And there are some aspects of things with the EU where we're not able to. Not nearly as bad as it is with these guys, but nonetheless. The United States, our economy is so tied to Europe's economy. The economic relationship between North America, Canada and U.S., and the EU is so much bigger than any other economic relationship. So we need Europe for our own prosperity, just like Europe needs the United States. So that's why we'll eventually get that sorted out. Brexit is hard to watch. I think
huge mistake.
You know, from an outside perspective, of course, like I say, I'm in Germany so much, you hear people talk about, oh, what a disaster, what a mistake. The fact is, the British people voted that way. And regardless of what the margin was, that was a democratic process. And so the government is trying to do its best to carry out what the electorate decided. I think it's unfortunate, but that's what they decided. And so I respect and admire how the European Union has stuck together. I think surprisingly how tight the EU has stuck together. It was a surprise to I think a lot of people, including our British friends. I think the thing I do worry about is the Irish border. I mean, I'm old enough to remember how terrible it was when you had the IRA, these terrorist attacks. I mean, how many people were killed? I think everybody correctly worries about a return to something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if within 10 years that UK comes back asking for a chance to come back in. I don't know that, but, or, you know, I mean, the British people are famous for resilience and adapting and, you know, carrying on. And we'll eventually get this right.
I want you to have some a few words for the Romanian people who are watching this interview.
First of all, Romanian people can be very proud of their men and women who are in their armed forces. I have seen them in Afghanistan. I've seen them on exercises. I have operated with them, trained with them, and these are great people that are committed to their country. I mean, nobody goes into the military to get rich, that's for sure. These are terrific men and women, and I'm very confident in them as an ally. The second thing is that this great country needs its young people, and because I'm all over Europe so much, I encounter Romanians everywhere that live in UK, that live in Germany, that live in other parts of Europe, Italy, that go to work there. You've got this incredible country here, so I hope that the society develops more resiliency, and young people see their best future here. You know, go abroad for education. That's wonderful. Being able to being Europeans, knowing America, but Romania needs its great young people for its own future.
General Hodges, thank you for this interview.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity and the privilege.
Thank you.
NATO, o alianță politico-militară între România și alte 28 de țări. O alianță călăuzită de cea mai importantă regulă. Un atac împotriva unui aliat este un atac împotriva tuturor. Protejăm viața. Ne apărăm cetățenii și teritoriul în numele păcii și al stabilității. Alături de aliații noștri, noi suntem NATO.